has carried out an airstrike on pro-Syrian government forces in the south of the country. Let's get more on this and cross live to Alexei Yaroshevsky, who's been following the details. Hi there, Alexei. How are the U.S. authorities explaining the decision to target these pro-Assad troops?
Well, for the moment, we don't have a lot of details, but what we do know is basically a confirmation that these airstrikes did indeed take place in the southern part of Syria. That is according to the official Twitter account of the operation of the U.S. coalition in Syria, Inherent Resolved, which said, first of all, that May 18th coalition struck Syrian pro-regime forces advancing in a deconfliction zone near At-Tanf, posing a threat to U.S. partner forces. The Twitter continued by saying this was despite Russian attempts to dissuade pro-regime movement towards At-Tanf, coalition aircraft show of force and warning shots. And finally, coalition forces have operated in the At-Tanf area for many months, training and advising vetted partner forces who are fighting ISIS. We can assume that the partner in question is a number of Syrian rebel forces that have been trained by the Pentagon for a few years to not much avail. And one of the statements also reported by Reuters, that member of the U.S.-backed Syrian rebel forces group told Reuters that the strikes hit a convoy of Syrian and Iranian-backed militias that were heading towards a base used by the United States and U.S.-supported forces in the region. So there's a little bit of ambiguity right now as to exactly what happened there. It doesn't seem that the actual Syrian army was struck, not according to at least the U.S. sources. The Syrian local sources on the ground are suggesting different things, but those are also unconfirmed for the moment. But the biggest question right now is whether this signifies something that we saw earlier when the U.S. military actually attacked the airbase of Syrian armed forces, or, you know, it may signify some sort of a shift in U.S. Policy towards Syria. But for now, the Pentagon has not come out with an official statement, and we're waiting for that to have a little more clarity on what exactly happened in South Syria.
With the latest on that, just waiting for more verification, of course. Alexei Yaroshevsky from Washington, D.C., thank you for that. OK, let's get more into this and to the other side of events. Political commentator Ali Ibrahim joins me live now from Damascus. Good to have you on the programme. So we were just hearing from Alexei there, no reaction from the Pentagon. Has there been reaction from Syrian authorities to the U.S. airstrikes?
Well, actually, the Syrian authorities did not make any official comment on the airstrike so far, because perhaps the attack was partly carried out by the US-led coalition against a paramilitary or a militia group affiliated with the Syrian army, but not directly part of the Syrian army, which makes it more difficult for the army to gather the necessary information to understand what happened exactly. What we know so far from our military sources is that a group of 5 to 6 pickup trucks were in a mission in the deserts to the south east of Syria, near the triangle that connects Jordan, Iraq and Syria, and these trucks were trying to scout the area where ISIL actually operates usually. And as they approached the scene of operations for some of the rebel groups that receive funding and aid and support, aerial support from the US-led coalition, they were attacked by aircraft without giving them warning, in contradiction with what we heard from US sources, that they tried to convince these 5 vehicles or 6 vehicles to stay away from the area of operation for the US-led coalition's backed rebel groups.
What kind of autonomy have these pro-Assad forces got, and why were they deemed enough of a threat for this strike? Because it could be a strike with far-reaching consequences, couldn't it?
Well, they don't have any autonomy. They operate as part of, or under the command of the central command of the Syrian armed forces and the Syrian army. But as you understand, Syria is a very large scene of operations with over 1,000 point of clashes, over actually 1,400 points where the Syrian army and its affiliated militias are engaging different rebel groups and radical groups such as ISIL, al-Nusra, and other forms of militant groups operating in Syria. So sometimes it's difficult to keep track of every one of these groups. The reason why they were perceived as a threat, we have to look at the background of the attack, the area where the attack took place. It has been the scene of a hectic race between the Syrian army and its and the groups affiliated to it. and the US-led coalition, and along with rebel groups backed by the US-led coalition. There has been reports that the United States and Britain are preparing for some kind of land incursion into Syria that is supposed to advance into the deserts of eastern Syria with the aim, according to these reports, of separating Syria from Iraq and preventing Iran from having a direct influence all the way from Iran, Iraq, Syria, and to Lebanon. We heard these reports, and the pro-US-led coalition rebel groups have been acting on the ground to fulfill this goal, and they have advanced into a crossing point known as the Tanaf between Syria and Iraq, and they took control of that crossing point, and they have started establishing positions in the deserts of eastern Syria. And the Syrian army was trying to advance to prevent the US from actually creating this division inside Syrian territories and taking parts of Syria under their protection, under their control. And I think today's airstrikes is the United States' way of telling the Syrian army to stay away from this area, and telling the Syrian army that they will not be allowed to fight ISIL. They want to be the party that will advance into the deserts of eastern Syria under the pretext of fighting ISIL, and they will stop anyone trying to stop them, including the Syrian military.
Political commentator Ali Ibrahim from Damascus, thank you for that. We're just talking about a story of US-led coalition aircraft bombing a convoy of pro-Syrian government forces in a remote area of the border with Jordan. That's according to US and rebel officials. Well, let's get into this a little bit further and join Charles Ortle. He's a political analyst. He joins me live now. Hi, Charles. What we're hearing now, not a lot of verification, not a lot of information coming from the Pentagon. What we are hearing is that the US says that the recent strike does not mean a change in their Syria policy. Are you in agreement with that?
Well, I think, we're at a moment in time where the Trump administration is being extraordinarily careful in how they communicate with the press and the wider world. And I think what we should do here, particularly in this very volatile case, is let's have a wait to get the official statement out of the Pentagon. I believe there's a press conference coming up shortly. Let's hear what they have to say. On the wider subject of what the U.S. role should be going forward in Syria, I think that's a matter that the American public deserves to have, some major debate upon, particularly given our record now, 16 years into a battle throughout the Middle East, just counting the period September 11, 2001 forward, where there are not a lot of great signs of success yet. Before we get into an escalating, widening confrontation in the volatile Syria, I think we really should have an in-depth debate in Congress. We should understand what the military objectives are, and then we should do our best to win those objectives with our allies.
What the question is, of course, this all comes back to how to defeat ISIL, doesn't it? That is the biggest issue in the region. And what impact do you think actions like this will have on the combined efforts to actually beat that terror group in the region?
Well, you see, I think we've made a mistake, not just the United States, but many parties intervening around the world in failing to define the threat for what it is. The threat is radical Islamist jihadism. It's not Al-Qaeda per se, or ISIL per se, or whatever the terrorist group of the month is next week. It's that ideological threat. And the ideology that animates people to go and blow other people up who may not choose to believe in this particular religion, that needs to be completely exposed and eradicated from the face of the earth, because it is a bankrupt way of thinking. Until we do that, we're going to be wasting blood and treasure around the world thinking that by, for example, killing Osama bin Laden, that we've actually done much. I mean, we have to expose this ideology, the bankruptcy inherent in it, and then cut it from the face of the planet.
Political analyst Charles Ortle, always great to have you on the show. Thank you very much.